October 12, 1943. Altitude, 23,000 feet. Over the Rhineland, the freezing air cracked with flak and cannon fire. The B-17 Flying Fortress, tail number 42 to 3067, shuddered violently. A 20mm shell smashed through its number 3 engine. Smoke poured from the nacelle, trailing like a black streamer over Nazi Germany. In the cockpit, First Lieutenant Robert Hayes gripped the control yoke as it trembled in his hands. The plane dropped its nose 15 degrees. Behind him, in the radio compartment, Sergeant Mike Donnelly watched in horror as a jet of hydraulic fluid sprayed from the bulkhead, painting the aluminum fuselage like arterial blood. The fortress was dying, and England was still 140 miles away. Above and to starboard, a silver streak banked hard. P-47 Thunderbolt. Call sign, Jersey 27. Jersey Thunder. Painted below the cockpit in block letters. First Lieutenant James Howell, 24 years old, New Jersey farm boy, 72 combat missions over Europe, had seen the hit. He peeled off the main escort formation, rolling his Thunderbolt to match the bomber's descent. He knew what happened to stragglers. Below, the bomber formation pressed onward toward the channel. No hesitation. No deviation. Standard procedure. One wounded bird couldn't compromise the mission. Hayes knew that. Everyone did. In the right seat, co-pilot Lieutenant Frank Morrison muttered quick math over the drone of failing engines. 3 left. Engine 3 was gone. Cruising at 160 knots, bleeding altitude at 200 feet per minute. If they dropped below 10,000 feet, they'd be within reach of German flak and fighters still circling like sharks. Over the radio, Howell's voice cut in. Big friend, this is Jersey 27. I have you visual. Stay with me. Hayes keyed his mic, voice tight and clipped. Jersey, we're losing hydraulics. Number 3 is on fire. We can't hold this altitude. Copy that, big friend. I'm not going anywhere. Howell made a promise he had no authority to make. His fuel gauge read 58 minutes, maybe less. But he didn't hesitate. He stayed on their wing, a guardian angel in a fighter already too far behind the line. This mission had begun 6 hours earlier at Thorpe Abbott's, base of the 100th Bomb Group. Target, Schweinfurt. Ball-bearing factories. Objective, cripple Nazi industry. Intel had promised moderate resistance. Intel had been wrong. At 0900 hours, 320 B-17s crossed the English Channel. The Luftwaffe hit them with over 400 fighters. Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Focke-Wulf 190s swarmed like hornets over the border. The sky turned into a slaughterhouse. Bombers spiraled earthward, on fire, in pieces, shedding men and metal as they went down. The P-47 escort had done what they could, but their range was limited. By the time they reached the border, most Thunderbolts were nearly dry. Howell had pushed it. He stayed longer than he should have. He was still here. Hayes's bomber had taken its first hit during the bomb run. Flak exploded beneath them. The ball turret gunner, Sergeant Eddie Martinez, caught shrapnel in his shoulder. The waist gunner, Corporal Tommy Briggs, went down cold, knocked out by a ricochet that dented his helmet but spared his skull. Then the fighters came. 4 FW-190s dove in from 11 o'clock high, spewing cannon fire. Sergeant Paul Richter, the top turret gunner, swung his twin 50s toward the lead aircraft. He tracked it perfectly, squeezing the triggers. The tracer arc lit up the sky, red, 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 then white flash. The Focke-Wulf erupted midair, disintegrating into tumbling parts. But the others came through. And then Engine 3 died. 15 minutes out from Schweinfurt, Hayes was losing the fight with gravity. The fortress dropped through 22,000 feet. Morrison fought with the feathering controls, trying to restart the dead engine. The propeller just windmilled, lifeless, spinning on drag alone. Hydraulics were gone. Gun turrets frozen. Bomb bay doors hanging open, dragging their speed even further. Skipper, Morrison said quietly. We should tell them to bail out. Hayes didn't respond right away. Below them, France. Occupied. Swarming with German patrols. Bailing out meant capture. Or worse. And Eddie Martinez, wounded, groggy, might not survive a jump. Not yet, Hayes said. Above, Howell's eyes scanned the sky, nose twitching with nerves, not fear, but calculation. His 8.50 caliber guns were loaded. 3,400 rounds at the start. He'd already burned 600 back over the target. That left 2,800. 28 seconds of life, if you counted in bullets. Movement. 2 o'clock high. His head snapped right. He toggled the gun switch to hot and waited. Out of the southern sky, they came. 3 BF-109s, angular and lean, painted in jagged splinter camouflage. They spotted the wounded bomber immediately. Stragglers meant easy kills. Luftwaffe doctrine. Luftwaffe habit. They moved like wolves. Lieutenant James Howell didn't wait. Throttle forward. RPMs rising. The P-47's 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R-2800 engine roared like a chainsaw through steel. The Thunderbolt lunged into position, a silver beast with a shark's heart. Howell banked hard left, slotting himself between the bomber and the hunters. He was their only shield. The lead Messerschmitts saw him late, tried to break left, too wide, too slow. Howell lined up the shot. Crosshairs on canopy. He squeezed the trigger. All 8. 50 caliber Browning machine guns erupted in chorus. The nose of the Thunderbolt jolted back, recoil enough to feel. Brass casings rained like golden sleet from under the wings. The sky lit with tracer fire, bright white arcs converging. Hits. Clean and solid. The 109's canopy disintegrated in a spray of glass. Chunks of cowling tore free. Glycol coolant hissed from the ruptured radiator, trailing like white smoke. The German rolled inverted and spiraled down, vanishing in the clouds, dead or dying. The remaining 2 broke off, climbing sharply, scattered and stunned. They'd come for a kill. Instead, they'd found Jersey thunder. Above 25,000 feet, the Luftwaffe pilots regrouped, circling like vultures with second thoughts. Below, the bomber staggered on, dragging itself west. Inside the B-17, the crew heard Howell's guns. Heard salvation. Hayes keyed the mic. Jersey, thanks for the save, but you're burning fuel. You should head home. A pause. Negative, big friend. You've got company all the way to the fence. The fence, fighter pilot slang for the English Channel. 90 miles west. At 140 knots ground speed, it would take 38 minutes. Howell checked his gauge. 42 minutes of fuel remaining. It would be close. Too close. The B-17 groaned lower. Altitude, 20,000. Then 19,000. Hayes and Morrison worked the controls, managing drag and trim like men balancing on a wire. They couldn't stop the descent. 3 engines weren't enough. Not with open bomb bay doors. Not with damage to the control systems. The flying fortress was now a controlled fall. At 18,000 feet, they hit a cloud layer. Visibility gone. For 30 seconds, they flew blind. Just instruments, just hope. A silver shadow followed close behind, keeping watch. Then they broke through. The clouds thinned. The sky opened. Clear air. And then, trouble. 5 more BF-109s, sharp-nosed and glinting silver, in classic Vic formation, closing from 12 o'clock level. Reinforcements. The Germans had radioed ahead. This was no longer harassment. It was a coordinated kill. Howell spotted them immediately. No hesitation. No questions. Throttle forward. Stick centered. Eyes locked. He climbed slightly, pointed his Thunderbolt directly at them, nose to nose at 400 knots. Combined closing speed, over 500. It was a game of nerves, steel nerves. 1 P-47 against 5 fighters. The German formation wavered, just a flicker. They had numbers, but they also had fear. This was the same pilot who'd torn through their comrades minutes earlier. At 3,000 yards, Howell opened fire. Long range. Not meant to kill, meant to rattle. Tracer rounds snapped into the sky like burning arrows. The lead 109 banked hard right, disrupting the formation. Perfect. The formation broke apart. Chaos. Howell dove below the mess, rolled inverted, belly to the sky, and came up shooting, a tight corkscrew with death at the center. He targeted the last fighter in the formation, fast, close. The BF-109 filled his sights. Trigger squeeze. Guns blazing. Rounds ripped across the fuselage. The German aircraft jolted, smoked, peeled away, trailing oil and coolant. 2 more 109s looped back, attempting to hit the bomber from behind. Inside the B-17, the tail gunner, Sergeant Walt Kendrick, tracked them. He fired a burst, 4 rounds, then nothing. The twin 50s jammed. God damn it, Kendrick cursed, yanking at the feed belt with shaking hands. Outside, Howell saw the trap forming. The bomber, slow and limping, was seconds from being flanked. He pulled the Thunderbolt around in a crushing turn. G-forces slammed him into the seat. Black crept into the corners of his vision. Stick back. Throttle wide open. The big fighter screamed through the turn, clawing for angle. 600 yards. Too far. 500 yards. Almost there. He lined up the lead attacker. Press. The P-47 kicked as all 8 guns opened. Bright lines of fire sliced the sky. Hits. Direct hits. 20 millimeters cannon shells detonated. 50 calories bullets chewed through the wing root of the Messerschmitt. The left wing folded, sheared off like tin. The fighter cartwheeled, vanishing into the clouds, spiraling like dead autumn leaves. That was enough. The final 2 Germans broke off. One trailing smoke, the other climbing away eastward. 3 fighters down or disabled. 5 minutes of fury. Howell pulled level, breathing hard, sweat dripping despite the cold. Silence. Or what passed for it. The low drone of the bomber's engines. The wind through bullet holes and torn metal. And Howell's heart, pounding in his ears. Hayes's voice crackled in the headset. Jersey 27, you just saved our lives. Howell didn't answer right away. He glanced at his gauge. Fuel, 28 minutes remaining. Distance to the English Channel, 65 miles. Inside the B-17, Hayes checked the altimeter. Altitude, 16,000 feet. Still descending. Still too far. Still too long. Morrison looked sideways at Hayes in the cockpit. His voice was quiet, not panicked, just tired. We're not going to make it, are we? Hayes didn't respond immediately. He kept his eyes on the instruments. Altimeter dropping, 14,000 feet. Fuel gauges on tanks 1 and 2 fluttering low. Oil pressure on the remaining 3 engines holding, barely. Airspeed dropping. The math was merciless. Physics didn't care about hope. Hayes exhaled slowly through his nose. We'll make it to the channel. He didn't add the second half of the sentence. They both knew what came next. After that, they'd ditch. Nose high. Gear up, into the frigid, black chop of the North Sea. In October, that water was a coffin, 50 degrees or less. Survival time, 20 minutes. Maybe 30, if you were lucky. If rescue came fast. Above and behind them, Howell was doing his own calculations. Fuel, 23 minutes remaining. Distance to England, 58 miles. Bomber airspeed, 140 knots. Time to coast, 24 minutes. He'd run out of fuel 1 minute before the bomber reached safety. 1 minute. Howell leaned forward, tapped the fuel gauge, and set his jaw. He knew what he had to do. Throttle back. Prop pitch shallow. Mixture leaned out to the edge of the engine's tolerance. A delicate balance. Squeeze every possible second from the tank. Fly smoother. Climb gentler. Think thinner. Maybe he could make it. Maybe. Below, France passed beneath them in perfect wartime detail. Tilled fields bordered by hedgerows. Stone villages tucked into river bends. Column roads with German trucks headed east toward the front. All of it enemy territory. All of it deadly. 13,000 feet. The fortress shuddered again. The number 3 engine, gutted by cannon fire, was no longer burning, because there was nothing left to burn. But the dead propeller spun uselessly in the wind, dragging the nose to starboard, metal cowling torn and shrieking in the airstream. Hayes fought it, hands firm on the yoke. Morrison worked the trim. Every correction felt sluggish. Sticky. The hydraulic system was near collapse. He knew the flaps wouldn't deploy on landing. He wasn't even sure the brakes would hold. But they had to focus on surviving the next few minutes. 12,000 feet. Above them, Howell weaved in his Thunderbolt. A steady S pattern, sweeping left and right, keeping the sky clear. Scan. Scan. Scan again. He checked his 6. Checked the sun. Checked his fuel. 22 minutes. Then he saw them. 10 o'clock high. 6 contacts. Fast. Tight formation. No more than a few miles out. 6 fighters, closing fast. 17,000 feet. Diving. Hayes glanced up through the top hatch. Sleek shapes grew larger, unmistakable. Messerschmitt Bf-109s, flying in stacked pairs. A hunting pack. Their wings glittered as they caught the sun, then turned black as they dove. This was it. No more harassment, no more solo attacks. This was the finish, a coordinated, simultaneous, kill the straggler pass. Howell knew it, too. 6 against 1. He'd done this dance before, but never this outnumbered, never this alone. He glanced at his ammo counter. Just under 400 rounds left. Maybe 20 seconds of fire. No time to think. He throttled forward. Big friend, I'm climbing. He didn't wait for a reply. The P-47 surged skyward, engine screaming, climbing head-on into the descending swarm. He selected the lead fighter. 1,200 yards, open fire. Too far for a hit, but that wasn't the point. He wanted chaos. Disruption. He wanted fear. 8.50 caliber guns tore the sky. White tracers streaked toward the Germans. The lead Messerschmitt broke formation, flinched. That was all it took. The perfect V broke apart like a snapped bone. 2 fighters veered hard left. 2 peeled right. Only 2 stayed in. The pattern had collapsed. Now it was a dogfight. Howell rolled into the turn, diving toward the 2 who remained on their run. His Thunderbolt vibrated under stress. He closed rapidly. 800 yards. 600. Pressed the trigger again. Guns roared. Tracer rounds streaked. One of the 109s banked violently away, streaming fuel. The other broke low, trying to outdive him. Howell stayed with the wounded one. Lined up again. Pressed. Hits across the canopy. The fighter rolled, fire trailing from the wing. Then Howell pulled up hard. He couldn't chase. He couldn't burn the fuel. 20 minutes left. And still 50 miles to go. He pulled back into position behind the bomber, just as the other 2 fighters circled around for another attempt. Howell locked onto the rightmost 109 and rolled into pursuit. His Thunderbolt snarled forward, the gap shrinking fast. 400 yards. Close enough. He pressed the trigger. The 8 Browning. 50 calibers erupted in synchronized violence. The nose of the P-47 dipped slightly with the recoil. Tracer rounds lit the sky, a focused stream of fire punching straight into the Messerschmitt's tail. The German fighter pitched upward as its empennage disintegrated. Then it stalled, flipping over, wings flailing, tumbling backward into a flat spin. Gone. But no time to celebrate. Howell's heart slammed in his chest as his eyes darted back to the sky. 5 more still circled like vultures, now diving in coordinated vectors. He couldn't cover every approach. Not this time. 2 Bf-109s came in from 7 o'clock high, angling to hit the bomber's rear quarter. Inside the B-17, tail gunner Walt Kendrick had finally cleared his weapons jam. His gloved hands slammed the breech closed. He swung the turret violently to the left, tracking the approaching fighters. Gotcha, he muttered. He squeezed the triggers. The twin 50s barked. Tracers arced into the sky. The lead German aircraft took a dozen hits to the nose. Then one final burst struck the engine cowling. White smoke gushed out. Flames licked the air. The 109 pulled up violently and veered away, its pilot likely wounded or worse. But the second 109 stayed on course, committed. Cannon fire sparkled from its wings like a strobe. 20mm shells chewed through the bomber's left wing. One struck home, square into the No. 2 fuel tank. For half a second, nothing happened. Then the wing erupted. A fireball burst outward from the nacelle, smoke and flame trailing 20 feet behind the aircraft. The smell of burning rubber, oil, and aluminum flooded the fuselage. Fire in 2. Morrison yelled. He lunged for the engine suppression panel, pulled the red T-handle. A hiss, CO2 flooded the burning compartment. Seconds ticked by like years. Then, the flames flickered. Died. But it was too late for the engine. No. 2 was done. The propeller seized, locked in place, dead weight on the wing. Now they were flying on 2 engines out of 4. Half the power, twice the drag, and 1,000 miles of enemy airspace behind them. The altimeter continued its slow death spiral. 11,000 feet. 10,800. 10,600. Hayes fought the yoke with everything he had. The Fortress wanted to roll left, badly. The 2 dead engines, both on the left wing, dragged the aircraft sideways. Trim tabs groaned. Hydraulics spit fluid. The aircraft bucked and yawed with every wind gust. Skipper, Morrison again. Louder this time. We have to bail. Hayes clenched his jaw. He didn't even look over. Not yet, he said. Then, through the side window, he saw it, just a glimpse. Jersey 27. Still with them. Above and behind. Howell's P-47 twisted through another savage turn. 3 109 swarmed him. One diving, one climbing, one approaching from 4 o'clock. The sky around the Thunderbolt lit with cannon fire. Shells smashed into his fuselage. One hit the engine cowling. Another blew a hole in the left wing. Howell grunted from the impact, but stayed in the fight. The P-47's rugged design, thick armor, radial engine, and sheer weight absorbed the punishment. He rolled inverted, pulled hard left, and fired. 1 second. 2. Sparks. Another German peeled off trailing smoke. But he was bleeding fuel. Fast. The gauge dipped below 15 minutes. Still he stayed. Still guarding them. Still fighting. Anti-aircraft bursts bloomed around them. Black puffs of smoke dotting the sky like sudden bruises. The German flak guns in Dieppe were awake. Tracer rounds streaked upward from hidden batteries, arcing toward the limping B-17. Shells exploded uncomfortably close. The bomber jolted. A concussive shockwave rocked the fuselage. Panels rattled. Dust shook loose from rivets. Hit? Hayes asked instinctively. Negative, Morrison said, scanning. Close, but we're good. The aircraft shuddered again. Another flak burst detonated directly below the tail, lifting the rear of the bomber momentarily before it sagged again. Howell stayed high. Too fast, too small for the flak gunners to track. He watched the sky erupt around the B-17 like the heavens themselves were trying to kill it. His fuel warning light blinked red. 6 minutes remaining. He toggled the mic. Big friend, you're taking heavy fire. You need to climb. Hayes nearly laughed. Negative, Jersey. Climb rate's gone. 2 engines, and one's barely holding oil pressure. We're flat out. Below 7,000 feet now. The bomber was bleeding altitude faster than ever. It wasn't flying anymore. It was falling with control. 6,800. 6,500. Over the channel now. The water stretched ahead like a grave. Cold. Unforgiving. Howell checked his compass heading. 270 degrees. Due west. England was there, 30 miles away. So close, and still too far. His engine coughed. He tapped the fuel gauge. It bounced between 5 and 6 minutes. It didn't matter anymore. He keyed the mic again. Big friend, I've got fuel for one more pass. If anything comes, I'll meet it head on. Then I'm out. Silence for a moment. You're out of fuel, and you're still covering us. Hayes's voice cracked with disbelief. Guess I'm just stubborn, Howell said. Tell your tail gunner to keep his eyes open. If I have to ditch, I'll do it close so you can mark the position. In the cockpit, Hayes looked down. The altimeter read 5,900 feet England, still a smudge on the horizon. He turned to Morrison. We're going to try for Manston. It's closest. Roger that. Morrison didn't say what they both knew. The odds were impossibly low. In the back of the bomber, Sergeant Kendrick scanned the channel through his shattered rear window. Donnelly tightened the straps on his seat harness and muttered a quiet prayer. Everyone else did the same. Above them, Howell circled once more, his P-47 growling. One more sweep, one last guardian angel. Then, from the north, movement. 2 dots. Faint. Growing. Contact. 9 o'clock high. Kendrick called. Howell saw them immediately. 2 fast-moving silhouettes. No contrails, Spitfires. RAF. He keyed the mic. Big friend, you've got company. Looks like Spitz. I'm bugging out. Hayes couldn't speak. His throat locked up. Jersey, he finally said, voice thick. You get home. Copy that, Howell said. See you in the pub. And with that, Jersey 27 banked west, dropping toward the water, throttle low, engine sputtering, running on fumes. In the bomber, everyone turned to watch the Thunderbolt go. Some saluted. Others whispered a final thanks. Above, the Spitfires moved into position. The baton had passed. Howell tapped the fuel gauge. The needle barely moved. 1 minute of flight time. Maybe less. His engine sputtered, caught once, then sputtered again. Below him, the channel stretched out. A dark, broken mirror beneath moonlight. The bomber was at 900 feet, descending steadily, still bleeding altitude with no hope of stopping. Hayes and Morrison locked eyes. This was it. Ball turret clear? Hayes asked. Almost, came a strained voice. It was Martinez. His wounded shoulder made climbing out difficult. Jibby him out if you have to, Hayes ordered. We lose that turret in a ditching. The waist gunners moved fast. They pulled Martinez halfway out of the hatch, blood smearing the inside of the fuselage. Corporal Briggs, still bleeding from the leg, grunted in pain but helped drag Martinez into the fuselage proper. 600 feet. Howell eased his Thunderbolt lower, now flying parallel to the bomber at wingtip distance. He keyed the mic. "I've got eyes on you, big friend. We'll go down together." Hayes didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Just fly. 500 feet. The bomber was heavy now, nose dipping slightly, even with full back trim. Morrison adjusted prop pitch to maximize remaining thrust. They weren't flying. They were coasting on momentum and hope. For 100 feet, the coastline of southern England, still invisible. Just the infinite steel-gray stretch of water. Wind whipped whitecaps into small breaking waves. The water didn't look welcoming. It looked like death. 300 feet in the tail section, Kendrick crossed himself. In the waist, Briggs looked once at the ocean and whispered something no one heard. Donnelly gripped the bulkhead and felt it tremble under his hands. 200 feet, Skipper, Morrison said softly. "I see it," Hayes answered. There, on the horizon, a blip. A speck. A patrol boat. British markings. Maybe 5 miles away. No time to signal. No guarantee they saw the bomber. But it was something. 100 feet. Howell's engine finally quit. With a sudden silence, the Thunderbolt's roar died. Propeller spinning idly now. The nose dropped. He adjusted trim and settled into a shallow glide, buying seconds. That's all he had. Seconds. "I'm gliding. I'll put her in right behind you," he said calmly, like it was just another landing. Hayes focused forward. The surface raced toward them. Brace. 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 30 feet, 20 feet, 10 feet. The bomber's tail struck first. A tremendous splash, followed instantly by the main fuselage slamming into the water. Wings tore against the waves. The entire frame groaned like a dying beast. Metal screamed. Spray shot 40 feet into the air. Howell saw it all from 100 yards back. He banked slightly left, aligning his glide. Waves rushed toward him. There would be no graceful landing. Impact. The P-47 slammed into the sea. The nose crumpled inward. The fuselage split open along the belly. Water poured in, devouring everything. For a moment, the channel was still again. Then, heads broke the surface. Airmen gasping. Hands reaching. Hayes. Morrison. Kendrick. Donnelly. Briggs. Martinez. One by one. Injured, coughing, bloodied, but alive. Clinging to debris, to each other, to life. Then another figure surfaced. Howell. Bleeding from a gash over one eye. He tread water, looked around. "Roll call," he yelled. "Who's out?" "Sound off." Voices answered. Not all, but most. It was impossible to tell in the dark who was there and who wasn't. Then lights. The British patrol boat was coming. They'd seen the crashes. A new hope surged through them. This time real. They weren't going to die in the channel. Not today. Howell floated near Briggs, who clung to a section of the bomber's wing. "You stayed," Briggs coughed. "Told you we'd go home together," Howell said, voice rasping. The RAF rescue launch was a sleek, gray vessel built for speed, powered by twin Rolls-Royce engines, bristling with radio antennae, manned by 6 sailors in woolen jumpers and steel helmets. It carved a white wake across the cold gray chop, spotting the yellow lifeboats just after dawn broke over the channel. The launch pulled alongside the rafts. Ropes were tossed. Hands reached down. One by one, the men were hauled aboard, soaked to the bone, lips blue, fingers barely able to grip the rails. Hayes was the last to climb aboard. He turned to look at the B-17, now mostly submerged, the tail section still visible above the waves. A symbol of what they'd survived, and who hadn't. He saluted once, a small gesture, then let the sailor help him over the gunwale. Howell lay wrapped in a thick wool blanket, still shivering uncontrollably. His eyes fluttered open when Hayes knelt beside him. "You stayed with us," Hayes said quietly. Howell tried to speak, but his jaw was locked from the cold. He managed one word. Had to. The launch turned toward the English coast. It would be nearly an hour before they reached Dover. The men were given hot tea laced with brandy, dry clothes, and space below deck to rest. Donnelly wept quietly as he cradled his hands around the steaming mug. Briggs stared into nothing, blood still soaking the leg of his flight suit. No one spoke of Martinez. Not yet. When they reached the harbor, medical teams were waiting. Ambulances with red crosses. Ground crews in wool caps. Officers with clipboards. Word had spread. A straggling B-17 had made it out. Everyone wanted to see the miracle crew. A few hours later, Inside a debriefing room near RAF Manston, Hayes and Howell stood side by side. Neither had slept. Hayes gave his report in a steady, quiet voice. Howell was still pale, but he refused to sit. He stood on one leg, the other wrapped in a thick wool bandage. His arm was in a sling. When the intelligence officer asked Howell why he didn't turn back, why he didn't break off when ordered, Howell answered simply, "Because they needed someone. And I was there." There was silence. No further questions. That evening, as the crew was settled into barracks with real beds, warm food, and dry socks, Hayes pulled out the crew roster and drew a line under Martinez's name. Then he wrote a single word beside it: hero. The next morning, a telegram was sent to Martinez's family in Arizona. Another went to Howell's parents in New Jersey. The wording was typical military phrasing, formal, detached, but buried inside it was a truth no words could fully explain. A few weeks later, a photo circulated through Allied press channels, a grainy black and white image of 11 tired, frostbitten men standing beside an RAF ambulance. In the middle, one man held a helmet under his arm, face bandaged, eyes blazing with quiet defiance. The caption read, P-47 pilot crashes in channel to save B-17 crew. All but one survive. It was only one story among thousands. But for those who lived it, and for those who remembered, it was everything. Men recited prayers. Some cried. Some just stared at the gray sky. When the British launch finally pulled alongside and began hauling them aboard, Hayes made sure Howell went first. "This man," Hayes told the British sailors, his voice hoarse and firm, "this man stayed with us for 90 miles. He fought off 20 enemy fighters. He ran out of fuel. He ditched alongside us in freezing water. He saved 9 lives today." The British captain looked down at Howell, soaked to the bone, blood on his temple, shivering violently but conscious. The captain gave a small nod. "Well done, Yank," he said quietly. "Well done indeed." 3 days later, in a field ceremony at an RAF station in southern England, James Howell was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest military decoration for valor in the United States Army. The citation read, "For extraordinary heroism in aerial combat against enemy forces, for sacrificing his own safety in the defense and rescue of a crippled Allied bomber and its crew under overwhelming odds." Hayes and every surviving member of the B-17 crew stood in formation during the ceremony. When the medal was pinned to Howell's chest, they saluted, not as formality, but with reverence. Years later, long after the war had ended, Hayes was interviewed by a war correspondent writing a book about the 8th Air Force. When asked about that day, Hayes spoke slowly, eyes distant. "We were dead. We knew it. Everyone knew it. Then this pilot in AP-47 decided we weren't dying that day. He stayed with us when he should have left. He fought for us when the odds were impossible. He ditched in the ocean rather than leave us alone. That's not courage. That's something beyond courage. I don't have a word for it." James Howell returned to civilian life after the war. He married, raised a family in New Jersey, and worked in aviation until retirement. He never spoke much about his combat service. When people asked about the medal, he'd smile and change the subject. But the men he saved never forgot. Every year until Howell's death in 1998, he received Christmas cards from the families of the men he'd rescued. Handwritten notes, photographs, grandchildren he'd never met, all alive because of a decision he made 23,000 feet over the Rhineland. 9 lives, 90 miles, one decision, a decision that defined what it meant to be a warrior. The men who flew these missions knew sacrifice in ways most of us never will. They flew into fire because someone had to. They stayed when they should have fled because brothers don't abandon brothers. If this story moved you, honor their memory.